In today's video, we have a variety of NHL news, including some news on some injuries, the waiver wire. We have some more COVID issues in New Jersey. We also have some trade talk involving teams like Pittsburgh, Montreal, Toronto, and Florida. We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. I want to kick things off with the latest update from New Jersey and their ongoing battle here with a little bit of a COVID situation that's kind of not getting any better. It's gotten worse since we found out originally about it yesterday. They now have 14 players on the COVID protocol list, which is certainly not a good sign, and some of the new names that were added include guys like Jack Hughes, Kyle Palmieri, Ty Smith, and others. They did get Mackenzie Blackwood off the list finally because he was been on it from a previous incident. So things are not good. Now, the Buffalo Sabres, who just played New Jersey before a lot of these guys were added here on Sunday, were incredibly upset over this news, given how close contact they were with New Jersey. Basically, a way a lot of this testing works is, they're able to play, and then they find out about a lot of the results sometimes later because of the way the test results are coming through. So I would not be surprised if we see this kind of spawn the NHL talk to the PA and kind of have some changes when it comes to the testing protocols and how frequently they're done, or maybe using more of those rapid tests or something, because something has to give here so that they don't get too far out of control. We've had a lot of games postponed now. We know the Devils and Sabres are likely both going to be out of action for at least a week's time. It could be longer for New Jersey. In the case of the Buffalo Sabres, Taylor Hall and Rasmus Ristolainen are both now on that COVID list, so depending on how things go for them, they could possibly be out longer as well. So it's just a bad situation overall. I understand why the Sabres are upset. They probably feel like they could have been exposed unnecessarily if things were working a little bit different here. New Jersey had some positive tests before that game, but of course, depending on the risk assessment that's completed after a positive test comes through, they determine who needs to isolate and who doesn't. And, maybe there needs to be some tweaking of how all that's working. I don't know, but certainly not a good situation, and we're seeing more and more of this pop up here. So I won't be surprised at all if we see the NHL and the PA, like I said, have some negotiations and maybe tweak how everything's working and maybe tweak some of these protocols. Now, news on the waiver wire. We had Edmonton Oilers forward Alex Chiasson on waivers yesterday, and surprisingly to me at least, he actually cleared. I thought there was a decent chance he might get picked up. He only has a short term left on his contract at $2 million, a decent secondary scoring player, obviously gained some valuable experience a couple of years ago in Washington with their cup run, but he went unclaimed. I thought a team to look at might be Boston because there was trade interest from them during the offseason that the Oilers and Bruins had talked about, but never materialized. So, of course, now Chiasson can be assigned to the taxi squad or eventually to the minors, depending on what they want to do. But right now, I believe he'll rotate out into the taxi squad and see how things go. But there could still be a trade possibility. I mean, obviously, he's a player that they're okay with losing. They had some pretty good forward depth. A lot of times you see players go through waivers. I know I see the comments on the channel a lot saying, well, if this player wasn't claimed on waivers, why would anybody trade for him? And it might, the logic, I guess, makes sense to some degree. You're thinking they had an opportunity to get that player for nothing. Why would they give up something to get that player? Well, sometimes they have no choice when it comes to cap issues or how many contracts you're carrying. You can carry a maximum of 50 professional contracts, and of course you have a ceiling of salary cap that you can't exceed. So sometimes you might have interest in a player, but to take them on, somebody else has to go out. So therefore, they're available because they went through waivers, but you need to talk to that team and see if they can take one off your hands to make it work out. So obviously we'll see what happens, but obviously it's a player that the Oilers are willing to trade if the right situation comes along. Like I said, I don't know if the Bruins will talk to them any further. They've been chugging along pretty good, so right now they might hold off doing anything on that regard. They have the necessary cap space though, so in the Bruins case, where they didn't take him on waivers, I'm not sure that they would make the trade, at least not right now. So we will see what happens with Chiasson. He very well could end up in Edmonton for the rest of the year, depending on how everything else goes. Now, when it comes to some injuries, we have some updates as well. The Red Wings are going to be without Tyler Bertuzzi. He's going to miss approximately as many as 6, as little as 4 games with an upper body injury. Obviously, that's a big blow for a team that's already kind of struggling. They are expected to get Robbie Fabry and Adam Ernie back, which will help a little bit as well. But still, Bertuzzi's a big part of their offense, so that's not going to be good. And the Avalanche have been hit with a bunch of injuries as well. They have, I think, it's 5 players that are listed as week to week, including top center Nathan MacKinnon. So we'll see how the Avalanche can battle through here in the next little stretch of games, because they're going to be shorthanded and without some of their top guns. Now, another NHL story that I came across today, not something we normally would talk about, but this one was kind of different and kind of funny. Apparently, a man in New Jersey accidentally received a big shipment, about $5,000 worth of hockey sticks that was supposed to be delivered to Zdeno Chara of the Washington Capitals. So, obviously, that's a lot of sticks, a lot of value. I know that person did go on social media and reach out to the Capitals. I believe they're in the process of arranging proper delivery to the team, but still, it's kind of a funny scenario when you end up with a delivery on your doorstep that's not intended for you. It's not even anywhere near where we're supposed to go, so I don't know how that mix-up happened. Clearly, it was supposed to go to the Capitals, not New Jersey, and, obviously Chara was losing out on a lot of sticks there, but I believe they're in the process of getting it back to him, but not something you hear of happening very often in that regard. Now, quick update as well on Rangers defenseman Tony DeAngelo, or I guess we should say soon-to-be former Ranger defenseman Tony DeAngelo, who of course cleared waivers and was basically sent home by the team. He will not play for them again. Technically, for purposes of where he's at on a roster, he's technically part of the taxi squad, but the intention is to not play him. Pat Brisson, his agent, and GM Jeff Gordon are in the process of working out a trade. They've both made comments indicating that they've both been good to work with. They have a good working relationship, and that there's everything's on good terms that way, trying to figure out a new landing spot. And they both also seem very confident, especially Brisson, who represents Chason, saying that he's pretty confident they can find a landing spot for him to remain in the NHL. Now, of course, basically what we're hearing as well is that there's a lot of teams that are not fond of the contract as much as they are about the drama that comes with everything off the ice that's happened recently and in the past. Obviously, having 2 years at $4.8 million is not a great contract for teams to take on right now, as many of them just don't have the space. I mean, they would be more likely to work it out through trade, but it's also been revealed that the Rangers are willing to eat a big chunk of that if they have to. Of course, they can retain up to 50% to facilitate a trade, or they could take back a not so favorable bad contract off another team's hands and do a swap that way to make things level out. But obviously there are teams out there that would not put in a waiver wire claim because not only were they concerned about the drama, but they don't like the contract either, is what the word is around the NHL. So I guess we'll have to remain to be seen if a trade can be worked out. Right now, all the parties involved seem to say that they're confident it can, and it's really difficult to say where he goes, because I think any team that makes this deal is going to be scrutinized and take a little bit of heat taking on a player that's coming with some baggage and a troubled past. Now, of course, the latest update as well in the Penguins GM search. The Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, we know had Jim Rutherford abruptly resign not too long ago and are in the process of finding out who will be their next general manager. Elliot Friedman's latest 31 Thoughts podcast and blog both discuss some new candidates. It's been revealed that, speaking of the Rangers, that one of their longtime executives, Chris Drury, apparently has been given permission to speak with Pittsburgh about the opening of the GM job. So that's clearly a big addition there to the list of guys they can talk to. You'd have to think Drury will be one of the front runners. I mean, he's been a guy that's been well respected around the NHL. I know there's been numerous teams in the last couple of years that have reached out to the Rangers for permission to speak to Drury about potential vacancies like that, and they have been denied. Up until this point, I think this might be the first time they let him actually take an interview for another spot. So that would be a big thing. I know he's done a lot with their American Hockey League team as well. He's a really smart hockey man, well respected, and is one of the guys not in a GM role, that are certainly looked upon as being one of the next up-and-coming GM candidates in the NHL. So that's a big addition for Pittsburgh to be able to speak to him. And, of course, Friedman also revealed that a couple of guys that keep your eye on as well on this list would be Joe Nieuwendyk. Of course, Joe Nieuwendyk is a long-time NHL player, worked as an executive for a fair bit of time as well, seemed to have a little bit of a frustration with things and has kind of taken a step back and has been out of the limelight, out of the NHL for a few years, but is interested in maybe making a comeback. So apparently his name is out there. And there's also another name that was very surprising to me, and that's former Penguins assistant GM Jason Karmanos, who they just fired not all that long ago, who was Jim Rutherford's right-hand man. They worked together for, I think it was about 15 years, dating back to their time with the Hurricanes. Of course, Carmano's dad's the former owner of the Hurricanes team, and he worked with Rutherford side by side as an assistant GM there for a long time. Eventually joined him in Pittsburgh after Jim took the job at the Penguins, and they've been side by side, have been his sounding board, his right-hand man, so to speak. So the fact that Carmanos was let go when he was, kind of sent a message to me that the Penguins probably are having Rutherford on a short leash, and that with his contract coming up in a year's time, they're probably going to be moving on and kind of wanted a fresh start. But for Friedman to suggest that his name is now back in the mix, I do find that somewhat surprising, but we'll see if he's involved in that capacity in any way. Another name that's likely not going to be involved is Tom Fitzgerald. Of course, he formerly worked with the Penguins too. They've put out a lot of assistant GMs that have gone on to get other top roles with other teams and are highly respected hockey people around the NHL. But in the case of Fitzgerald, he has a 4-year deal with New Jersey, but he's only guaranteed to be the GM for 1 year. Now, we're hearing reports that the Devils will not give permission to let him talk to Pittsburgh about this opening, and they might be talking to Fitzgerald about tweaking his contract. So they very well might make some adjustments where he's guaranteed to be GM a little bit longer, perhaps. I'm not sure if that'll happen, but there is some speculation that that's something that they're considering doing. They view Fitzgerald to be a big part of their future and continuing this rebuild for the Devils. So don't expect him to be involved either with the Penguins GM search. Now, staying with Pittsburgh, though, there was more information as well in Elliot Friedman's blog today talking about some defensemen they were looking at. And one of the defensemen that many believe that he was involved with trade talks on before he abruptly resigned was Travis Dermott of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and as well as having a look at Victor Mete, the Montreal Canadiens. But some think that it was the Dermott trade with Pittsburgh that was being lined up when ownership got involved. Now, I'm not sure what would be about Travis Dermott that they wouldn't like so much. I mean, it wouldn't be a huge trade unless there was other pieces involved that we don't know. I'm not really sure, but it is believed right now that the Penguins are a team that's looked at pretty much every available defenseman around the league, given the number of injuries they've had. Now, a lot of the younger players they've had step in, especially a guy like Pierre-Olivier Joseph, for example, has played exceptionally well, and it's going to be difficult to take him out of the lineup when the rest of their blue line gets healthy. But obviously one of those younger guys like Mete or Dermott would be a great addition. It wouldn't be a huge price tag. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to Pittsburgh as well, even though they don't have a GM right now, like in the case of the potential deal for Victor Mete, Marc Bergevin, the GM of the Habs, and Mario Lemieux, who would probably be handling some of those GM-type duties, at least on an interim basis here while they find somebody. They're great personal friends and have been for a long time. So those two guys could certainly strike a deal if they really needed to. I don't think Bergevin's in any hurry to trade Mete. We saw him play in last night's game. He's going to be remaining in the lineup for the next game as well. They're actually taking Romanov out. Head coach Claude Julien also actually made some statements today saying that Kulak, Romanov, and Mete are going to be like on a 3-player rotation, so to speak, that none of them are sitting too long and they'll all kind of be involved in the lineup. So right now, Kulak and Mete are both going to play tonight in the next game. And then, of course, Romanov will sit out this one. So we will see where things go. Like I said, I don't think Bergevin's in a big hurry, but of course, like I said, just because they don't have a GM in Pittsburgh and they have shown interest in the Habs defenseman as well as the Leafs defenseman, would not be surprised that they strike a deal. Wouldn't be shocking to see Mario kind of pull the trigger here on something that the team really needs. A lot of their defensemen are going to be out for an extended time, and they could use some help back there. So we will see what the Penguins decide to do. And another player to keep your eye on is Florida Panthers forward Brett Connolly. Now, of course, Connolly was a member of the Washington Capitals. Was a great secondary scoring role. Helped them win the Stanley Cup. Had a career year in his final year of his contract when he was becoming a UFA, which is not surprising. We see a lot of guys do that when they're playing for a contract. Sometimes things tend to go better. You get a stronger effort. And then he signed an extended year deal with the Florida Panthers. Still has 3 years left on that contract. And this year's kind of gotten off to a not so good start for him. He's played 4 games with goose eggs across the board. No points, no goals. no assist, and he's been a healthy scratch a few times, so there is some talk that they might be willing to part with him. Obviously, some of their younger players, we've seen guys like Owen Tippett get an opportunity, Hepo Niemi, and some of these guys might be kind of, willing to be able to take his spot. So we'll see if Connolly becomes available. We know the Florida Panthers are a team that's, at this point, I would say they're not afraid to be cutting costs either. I mean, we have goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky's got off to another bad start. It looks like Chris Driedger is kind of taking over the starting role. He's played more games than Bobrovsky, not by a lot, but still his stats are way better. Like Bobrovsky's got a sub 900 save percentage again, a goals against average well over 3. He's played 3 games. Driedger's played 4, and his stats are way better. The team has done much better. I'm not sure what's going on with Bobrovsky, but it's a clear case. But once he got that contract, he kind of just lost his game, which is really bad for the Florida Panthers in that respect. I mean, I know the Florida Panthers have some terrific young goalie prospects coming up through the system as well, so I don't know what the future holds for their goaltending situation, but that's an awfully big contract that's going to be difficult to move on from if they decide they want to do that. Right now it's not looking good. But in the case of Brett Connolly, like I said, he's still a guy right now who could easily bounce back, be a good secondary scoring for a team that's going into a playoff run. And if he's not going to get the opportunity in Florida, then very well could be a guy you see on the move here ahead of the NHL trade deadline. So, of course, as always, we'll know your thoughts and opinions on all the items of news discussed here today, and we can discuss further down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors from around the entire NHL. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.